Have you ever wondered why some people read one newspaper and some read another?
Yes. Give me the best paper in the world.
Hard start, please. Daily Mirror, please.
Excuse me, madam. Why are you reading the Financial Examiner?
I like reading about money. And let me make this perfectly clear. Money is what made this country what it is today.
And you, sir, next to the lady, why are you reading Equality Today?
Equality Today. Only paper fair to minority groups. Equality Today fair. All other papers not fair.
And you, sir, why are you reading Saucy Titbits Daily?
I like the tits and bums on the centre page, old boy.
Well, there you are. That gives you some idea of the attitudes and interests that people have, which makes their choice of newspaper different from other people. But remember that by the time you and I come to choose a newspaper, the real choices have been made by other people, the people in the newspaper business and industry themselves, the people whose choices go to make up the typical front pages, some of which we have here. Now let's take three of our very well-known daily newspapers, the Times, the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph, all for the same day, Wednesday, September the 26th. Those cruel Spanish police, the Daily Mail. Chancellor predicts lower loan rates but little jobs relief. That was in the Times. And sharp rebuke for South Africa in the Daily Telegraph. So there you have, as I said, three of our main newspapers, but all of them took a different lead story. If, however, you take three other newspapers, more popular ones it has to be said, the Mirror, the Star and the Express, you find that all three of them had the same story. And the Express and the Mirror nearly had the same headline. In fact, they had the same sentiment in it. It was Heroin, Why All the Fuss in the Express, and Heroin and My Son in the Daily Mirror. So, who decides what's news, how, and why? Well, what we did was, we went to the Daily Mirror, and we filmed there on the day before that newspaper was printed, on Tuesday, the 25th of September. We went into the offices of Mike Malloy, the editor, and I spoke to him. But first of all, we went to see how practically the Daily Mirror for that Wednesday was put together all through Tuesday. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the night editor comes on duty. Later, he'll make the choice of the front page story for the approval of the editor, Mike Malloy. The first thing he does is to look through the mock-up of the paper, known as the dummy, to see how much room there is for actual news after the space bought by advertisers has been used.
World Briefing 6, News 7. Okay. Tom, are you doing the run-through, please, boss? Paul? Sir, what you got? This one so far.
After that, he confers with the news editor about likely items in the news that might make headlines.
Sneaking drugs into Britain in their girdles. Very good case, and I don't think we're going to have any legal problems with it at all.
Are they famous?
No, they're just, you know, routine model girls, but they've appeared in the odd magazine, and that's what some of them are hostesses in clubs, but, you know, they're quite interesting ladies. You've seen the copy on Gordon Jackson's 22-year-old son. Right. It's not bad. I mean, it's a typical story of a kid today with a problem. He got hooked on drugs. The magistrate told him when he first appeared on remand, keep off it and we'll give you a light sentence. In fact, he has got a very light sentence. And he you know, said, I've beaten the habit, I'm not going to let anyone down. In addition, we've got to talk with his wife, who says she's mystified about the whole thing and can't understand what the fuss is about. Huh? can't understand what the fuss is about.
Yeah.
Which is clearly concerned.
She's an actress.
Yeah.
No, she's sort of making light of it.
Because it's only cannabis.
Pardon?
Yeah. I thought it was because it was just small-scale stuff, but...
No, it's not cannabis, it's heroin. And
well, then that's serious, yeah. Then that might make a front, mightn't it? Yeah.
Now, will probably be very funny. First ever strike in Disneyland and Disney World. Right. So at the end of the day, we've got these people who work for Disney World, want more money. At the end of the day, we've got Pluto and Mickey Mouse on the picket lines.
Back with her old flame that she had a row with.
After the news selection, there are photographs to select.
They are back together again.
Is that the best we can do for quality?
Yes. Well, that's Jackson and his wife, the one that's been spout. I mean, that's not today's picture, of course.
Have we got the boy?
There's the boy today outside court.
Ron, have you got some glamour players, mate?
What do you think of this? Sweater Fox. Brand new set of pictures. And exclusively her in Belfast with the troops.
She is lovely.
Straight across the Belfast.
Young Samantha.
Sold. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
By now, well into the afternoon, things are beginning to hot up on the centre table they call the backbench, and the art editor is beginning to rough in some of the inside pages. Meanwhile, Vic, the night editor, is making his choice of headlines and front-page copy.
Jackson's son. Yeah. I know. I don't want to project the views of the mother because they're so extraordinarily stupid. But it's still the best story of the day.
So, the best story of the day has finally been chosen for the front page.
How are you doing?
I wouldn't half love it if we could have this written up on the lines of the mother's extraordinary remarks after this silly young man has been given a conditional discharge today.
Well, we're getting themed to Reno's story on that, and we're also getting reaction from various drug organisations saying, you know, that heroin is one of the great scandals of our time.
Yeah. I mean, one understands why, but she's defending him to excess, saying that he's only having fun.
Yeah,
she doesn't know what all the fuss is all about. And we don't want readers of the Mirror and young readers of the Mirror to get the idea that we go along with the views of this silly bitch.
Okay, yep.
Well, we got, Ron, picture of them side by side. It's a bit uneconomic for the shape. Okay. Is that all right, then? Professional's mother defends drugs charge son. What a fuss. And we'll just let the story tell itself, yeah? Mum and Dad. And the silly lad.
Oh, thank you very much. No, that's all right. Don't worry about that. That's fine. That's fine the way it is. Lovely. Thanks.
What a fuss. But at 5:10, editor Mike Malloy decides he doesn't like that headline and changes it to Heroin and My Son.
That's a lowercase. I prefer that, though. And then if we've got a term. This is Gordon Jackson, his wife, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that would be totally divorced
right.
and a puff at the top. That'd be okay.
Smashing.
So the hard-pressed art editor has to start all over again, drawing up a new page and making sure the headline will fit the available
You
space.
can be quite small and we can use bastard measures setting down there, can't we?
Yeah. Got to be on. Too small. 7.5. That fits.
Ian, page 1, mate, which is being drawn now, is the story about Mrs. Jackson's reaction to her son's drug offences. I want to make that the emphasis of the story
but we don't want to embarrass and humiliate her, so make sure that it's legal. We just happen to think her views are potty, if you'll pardon the pun. But there's the main copy. I think that falls into shape quite sensibly. We're also tying in a letter from Marge, an open letter, as it were, to Mrs. Jackson, on page 2, saying that she's a silly bitch. Words to that effect. Any problems, give us a shout, mate. Shape will be with you in a jiff.
Slowly but surely, pages 1 and 2 take shape, and the chief sub-editor now has the task of editing the copy to fit the column inches.
Just walk out.
By 11:20 at night, all the copy, the headlines and the photographs have been transferred to metal plates for printing. The presses are ready to roll, and there it is, the chosen front page story, slowly emerging. Well, that's how the Mirror was made for Wednesday, the 26th of September. And to discuss with me how it was made and whether it was interesting or not, and indeed generally what the paper said on that day, I have 4 pupils from Haverstock School in northwest London. They are Caroline Cooper, Kevin Donaldson, Julian Legg and Dion Igonyu. Caroline, the choice of the lead story for the Mirror, did you agree with it, and why do you think it was picked?
3 main reasons. 1, because he's Gordon Jackson's son and he's, you know, on telly and everything. 2, because it's heroin and it's dangerous and it's bad for you and it's illegal. And 3, because his mum made a comment saying, what was all the fuss? What was the big deal about him taking heroin? He was off of it.
So in a way, for you, it had all the parts that go up to make a good story.
Yeah.
Kevin, would you agree?
Yeah, I suppose so. It attracts people, and that's, you know, mainly for them 3 main reasons.
Yeah. Dion, yeah?
I mean, you see heroin, it's out all the time now, and you want to read about it, and especially the parents are famous. You think, oh, their son involved with heroin.
Right. Do you think, it's a very interesting point, Dion, because do you think that the story wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been Gordon Jackson's son?
No, I doubt if it would have been there, because it wouldn't have been as important. It wouldn't have made the front pages anyway. It might have been in a little column.
Julian, from reading the story, which I know you have done several times, what do you think it tells you about what the Daily Mirror thinks about heroin?
Well, by the way they write it and the way they
splashed it on the main page, yeah.
Disagreed with what his mother said. Right, I can say that they're really against heroin, right, and especially against a mother of someone who used to take it, didn't really mind, right, saying it was a fashion.
Yeah, they're shocked with her. She was saying, oh, what's the fuss about? He's only having a bit of fun. That's like saying all the teenagers can do it, it's only a bit of fun.
Now, the other newspapers, as we pointed out, I mean, for example, the Express almost had the same headline, it certainly had the same idea in the headline, and the Times, I think it was you, Julian, who pointed out that the Times covers the story on page 3. And it covered it completely differently, really, didn't it?
Yeah, because, like, for a headline, it's completely different for a start. Like, the Mirror, it says, heroin in my son. And in that one, it says, son of TV actor beats drugs.
Right.
Right, and the Mirror story bases it around what his mother says. And that one just talks about the court case and how he beat the drug by not getting addictive.
Julian, what do you think? Because in a way, if we just look at them there, the Sun and the Mirror, and in fact this applies almost to every day, the Sun and the Mirror, they look, just at first glance, very alike, almost as if they were the sister papers, although, amazingly, it's the Sun and the Times, which are sister papers. But they're different, if you know they're different political bias, aren't they?
Well, yes, especially when it's close to elections and votes and that. Because, say, right, which was Labour? Mirror?
The Mirror is the Labour one, yeah.
Yeah, like, say, for the Mirror, when it's election time, it mostly says that you should vote Labour and how good they are and all that, when the Sun has different views on it.
How important, Caroline, do you think the job of the editor is?
His job is quite important, but the man who owns the paper, or the person that owns the paper, is more important because it's his paper, and anything that people don't like, they're going to come back to him on it.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's why you get a lot of slanting and bias in the paper, including in budgets and elections and all things like that. But they've got to have stuff that will sell the paper, but still fits the owner's choice.
What about the bingo craze in the newspapers? I mean,
half the papers on the bingo. You look at, and they use half the paper. I mean, that's all they're really sort of like interested in at the moment.
Yeah.
Is they're competing against the bingo. Yeah.
Do you think so, Dion?
Yeah.
That's what sells newspapers now, bingo.
Yeah, most people are into bingo, so they think, oh, I've got to do bingo tonight, so they buy the Sun or the Mirror, and the Mirror keeps putting their bingo up, and then the Sun, they're always against each other.
Do you believe everything you read in the newspapers?
Well, I'm never aware of if it's true or untrue, or if it's biased.
Yeah, a lot of the papers are biased and that. Like me, I've normally got two papers in the house, like the Sun and the Mirror. And if you read one story in one paper, read one story in the other, you can see the contrast between them.
Do you think the Mirror's attitude to the story itself, to heroin, was actually a fair one?
Yeah, they were shocked. I mean, how can anybody say that heroin is just fun? I mean, it can kill people, it's not fun.
I don't believe that would influence you to take heroin simply because somebody else said it was fun, would it?
No,
of course not. When I went down to the Daily Mirror a couple of days after that publication, I put many of these points to the man responsible for that day's Mirror, the editor, Mike Malloy. But, Mike, don't different newspapers have a different slant?
Well, news isn't slanted, or shouldn't be. We've got 12 million readers like the Daily Mirror. Whatever you put into the paper, a great percentage of that 12 million people would disagree with it. If you made the front page, God is love, a lot of people that don't believe in God would write in and saying you're putting forward religious propaganda.
Why did you alter the headline, which originally had been, "What a fuss," to what has eventually ended up as "Heroin and my son"?
Yes, we know that certain words attract. And heroin is a word which will interest people because of all the connotations of heroin. It is more exciting, not exciting, but it's more arresting to say heroin and my son, which immediately implies an awful lot of information to people. There's a vast amount of facts in that. If you analyze it, first of all, it's about a drug which is affecting thousands of people now, a terrible social problem. It's about a parent talking about their son, and naturally, heroin and my son implies a problem, which therefore intrigues people, which therefore introduces an interest that people may want to read.
Is the hardest task for the editor deciding whether to give the reader what you know he wants, or what you think he ought to have?
That's always the question of what you should do as a newspaper. You have a duty as a newspaper. Most people get their information immediately through radio and television. What they want then is a reinforcement, an interpretation, and news in a little more depth. And they tend to turn to newspapers for that. So front page news, unless it happens in the middle of the night, is not front page news to people anymore. Well, a good story was defined by Lord Northcliffe, who said a good story is something nobody knows.
Well, that's what Mike Malloy, editor of the Daily Mirror, had to say. Caroline, what did you think of his answers to our questions?
Well, I think he went round most of your questions, didn't answer them fully or anything.
He slanted round the question to suit himself, like what he wanted to say, he put in, otherwise he just tried to get random without giving a full answer.
Right.
He didn't want to put his paper down. He wanted it to sound good and...
I suppose that's reasonable enough, Dion, though, isn't it? OK. Right, well, my very great thanks to Caroline, Kevin, Julian, and, of course, to Dion. And by the time you see this programme, of course, the newspaper that we have discovered and discussed in depth will be a very old one indeed. But don't forget that tomorrow there'll be more newspapers on the stands. And when you read them, when you buy them, just remember that there are two sides to every story. Bye-bye. Well...